Hey, welcome back to Matt's Garage DIY. Today we're going to disassemble and reassemble the Remington 870. First things first, I'm sure a few of you are wondering about the paint job on my 870. This was a COVID project I did with my boys. They were playing a lot of Rainbow Six Siege back at the time, and there was a weapon skin called the Shark Shot. So this was just a little fun thing that we did. Now on to the actual 870. Remington first produced the 870 back in 1950 to replace the Model 31. Model 31 was known for its incredibly smooth action, sometimes called the ball bearing repeater, but it was expensive to produce as it had a lot of machined parts. To better compete with Winchester's Model 12, Remington came out with the 870, and it was an immediate hit. There are more 870s have been sold in the world than any other shotgun, and it is known for its great reliability. A lot of police and military forces around the world use this shotgun for that very reason. So, enough about the history. Let's get into it. Safety first. Before you start working on any firearm, you need to make sure it's unloaded. Pull the action back. Chamber, magazine tube, or chamber and breech are empty. Visually, physically inspect that. Nothing in the magazine tube. Good to go. Start by loosening the nut on the end of the magazine tube. Can work the action part way forward. At that point, the barrel just slides off. Next is the spring retainer in the end of the magazine tube. If you look in the end, you can see there's like a little steel cup. It is split, spring steel, so it's sort of expanded in there. You'll need to pull that out. What I do, you'll notice there's a small hole in the top, so I will take a narrow flat blade screwdriver and just start gently kind of working that cup out from the inside. Remember, this will be under spring tension, so you want to kind of keep your hand over the end. Just kind of working the back of the cap out. Tip it, you can see the edge of the cup is just starting to come out there now. So I'm going to work that a little bit more. Slide the spring out. Next, we're going to remove the fore-end action bars and the bolt. To do that, I'm going to show you one thing inside. Lift the shell lever. You can see on the left side, there's a shell catch. You'll need to depress that as you slide the fore end forwards. So we're going to start sliding that fore end forwards, depress, and it slides out. Last thing is to push out these two pins. Both coming out the back side. Your trigger assembly comes out. That's how you take it apart. So with both the trigger assembly and the bolt, later in the video I will take those apart as well. I'll put the times here so you can just skip to that if that's what you're specifically looking for. With this, we'll take out the firing pin and the little extractor. This, we're just going to take that completely apart. But now, let's put it back together. So first we'll put the trigger assembly back in. Put these two pins, push those two pins back in. This front one is a little stiff on mine. Use something non-marring. You can just kind of tap that in. There we go. All right. Now we're going to reinstall the fore-end action bars, bolt carrier, and bolt. So we'll slide the fore-end and action bars on, put that bolt carrier on, the bolt on top. Start sliding that in. You will need to reach in and push that left shell latch again. Start sliding this back. Push the action bar release, and you can slide your fore-end all the way back, opening that up. Now it's time to install the barrel. Barrel simply slides on the end. Make sure that's pushed all the way back. Lastly, put the magazine tube spring back in. We have this little metal cup, spring cup. Push that in. That is quite a tight fit. I just have it kind of just started there. I'm going to put the butt on the floor and push that down to get that fully seated inside. Last thing, little nut or cap on the end of your magazine tube. Check it for function. Moving on to the bolt, we're going to take out the firing pin and the extractor. For the firing pin, there's a pin that goes through top to bottom. You drive it out top to bottom, and that will allow the firing pin to come out. Got a punch and hammer. Starting to come out. Going to center that on my block a little better. There we go. Pin is driven out the bottom. Spring, firing pin. Now for the extractor, basically it's an L-shaped piece. You also have a plunger and a spring inside. What you need to do is depress the plunger as far down inside the bolt as you can, and then rotate the extractor so this hook kind of touches the face of the bolt, and then the extractor will lift out. I'm just using a small flat blade screwdriver. I'm going to insert it between the extractor and the plunger. Push that plunger down as far as I can. Rotate the extractor out. So you can see the extractor, so it is actually in its resting position, positioned like that. As you compress the plunger, you need to rotate the extractor like this to get it out. And we have the plunger and spring. Plunger and spring. Put it back together. First we put in the spring and the plunger. Keep in mind there's a end of the plunger specifically designed to go into the spring, and then the extractor. Again, using sort of that rotating motion to get the extractor back in. Kind of push it in against the plunger, rotate it, it snaps in place. Check the spring tension. There you go. First, we're going to take the locking block, drop that in. Mine has a little lug on the one side, so you can only actually put it in the one way. That prevents you from putting it in backwards. Drop that in. Now, don't leave that set on your bench. You'll need to hold that up to actually get your firing pin in. If you notice, there's a shoulder on this that will not pass through right here. So if you have this sitting on your bench, that shoulder on your firing pin won't fit through right there. So, got this in hand, kind of got that loose so that the one end where I'm going to start inserting the firing pin has dropped kind of below. I'll try to show you there. You can see that's dropped below. When it's on your bench, it pushes up like that, kind of interfering with the firing pin. So I'm going to make sure that this end is dropped. Set my firing spring in, or my spring for my firing pin in. I start fishing that firing pin through into the spring. It's a long, skinny spring, so you just kind of have to work that carefully through. Once the shoulder of your firing pin has passed the locking block, then you can set this down on a bench. Makes this a little easier to work with. I'm going to kind of keep fishing that through. You will notice on your firing pin there's a notch on the one side. That will need to be on the same side as this hole where your pin was. This pin is offset, that notch needs to match up with it. So we're going to keep working this through, kind of fight with that spring a little bit. All right, so I've got the spring almost all the way in. So I'm going to double check that orientation, making sure my notch is on the same side where my pin is going to go. I can push my firing pin in, take my pin, put it back in. Note on my pin at least, there was one end that was fluted, so that will be towards the bottom. So I'm going to drop the smooth end in first, so that'll be towards the top. Push that in. That's not quite far enough to catch yet. Sort of have to do that again. A couple little taps there, you can see. Now it's caught. Now I can move to my locking block. The firing pin's not going to come out. And that's a double check that my sort of that groove in the side of the firing pin is in the correct location. So I'll bring my block back. Driven the pin back in. Firing pin works. Extractor works. Done. Now for the trigger assembly. There have been a few minor changes over time. Probably most notably, some of the pins in the trigger assembly you'll find have been like mushroomed or peened over. If you don't need to take those pins out, I would recommend not. If you have to, then that's what you got to do. On my trigger assembly, I don't have any pins that have been peened over. They all just drive out. So let's get to it. First off, I'm going to start by removing this spring from the top. You can just compress that with a pair of pliers, take that off. I'm just starting with the spring just to relieve any tension in here. The less of this that's going to fly apart, the easier it's going to be. Next, we'll do the shell lifter. It's a little clip. So there's a pin here that pushes out. I'll show you that from the top. You can see the pin right there. So that pin just pushes through. Mine's quite loose. There is, I believe, supposed to be one of these clips on each side. Mine only has one clip. It's worked fine like that. I'm going to put it back in. But if you have an extra clip, put that in. Now, as you push this pin out, you're going to see there's a little plunger right here. That is under spring pressure. So you don't want this flying across your workbench. So you can kind of push down on that claw, maybe put a bit of pressure on that, and then you can start to push this pin out, pull that pin out. I'm just going to grip this with a pair of pliers. Anytime you do this, you want to be careful that you're not having to grip super hard. You don't want to mar or damage that. But in this case, it comes out pretty easy. It just gives me a little easier way to grip that and pull that out. All right, that's out. I'm going to very slowly release my thumb off that claw because, like I said, you do have that piston that's under the spring pressure. There we go. Your shell lifter lifts off. Taking your finger off. Piston and spring now lift out. Next, we'll remove the trigger. There's a pin right here. On mine, it drives through from right to left, so I'm going to go left to right to drive that back out. Get a block, punch, and drive that out. Pins out. The trigger, it does still kind of hang up over on the action bar release. So I'm going to leave that, but that pin is out. We'll do the action bar hammer pin next. It's another pin at the front. Again, this is the one that I've seen on some versions, sort of a large head on one end and then the opposite end peened. Mine is not like that. It's just a smooth pin that pushes all the way through. Almost all the way out now. There is some spring. So on your action bar release, you do have this tab. Move this into some better light. You have this tab that's pushing on this plunger. So there is some spring pressure on that. So again, we push down on that a little bit. That will help to keep the pieces, like as you can see there, the hammer just came off. It just helps to line the pieces up a little bit better. Anytime that there's spring pressure on a bunch of surfaces that you're trying to put a pin through, just makes ever so slight variations, which just makes it hard to get that pin out. So I'm going to push that plunger in, and then I should be able to finish pushing that spring out. There we go. Okay, carefully lifting my thumb off. You can lift this plunger and spring out. Action bar comes off. I can go back to my trigger. It's no longer catching on the action bar, and I can lift that out. Going back to the front by the hammer, there is this spring. Just kind of lifts off around the one side. Just kind of a U-shaped spring, J-shaped spring. There you go. Now we're going to take the sear out. Where this plunger and spring came out, that were right there, just in there, there's a little hole that you can push through, and you push this pin out. Very loose. Just reach in this side where the plunger hole is, you can push it through, push that pin out, and that lifts out. One more large pin, or I guess like hollow tube almost, in the top here. Slide that out. Again, mine only has one spring clip on it. Just going to slide that out. And last is the safety. So you have a very tiny little pin there. Mine, if I flip it over, you can see is pointed on this end. So you only see a small point. So again, you're going to want to drive that from the left side to the right side. Pushing that out, there is a spring underneath there. So you want to be careful. Probably keep your finger over top of that as you drive it out. I've just got my thumb over the hole where the spring is. Try to push this pin back through now. There we go. That pushes through quite easily. Pin has fallen right out. If you look right in there, you can see a little spring. Tap that, it comes out. Tap that a little bit more. Ooh, safety button actually fell out. There's still one more piece in here. Just barely coming out. There we go. Now this is one other piece I've seen to be different. On some models they have a ball instead of this little plunger pin setup. Just keep that in mind. There are some minor variances, but the basic assembly, disassembly will be the same. So let's put it back together. So we'll kind of do this in reverse order. I'll start with the safety and put that safety button in. Just slides right in. Drop the little plunger in. Large end of the plunger down to that hole. Spring on top. Yeah, I'm going to try to keep my fingers out of the way. There are some very small pieces here, but I'll do my best. So again, we've got that spring. I'm going to take my pin, pointy end in first. I'm going to put that in till it just kind of touches the spring. I don't want that point kind of binding on those coils. Then I'm going to use a small flat blade screwdriver, kind of tip that in, try to catch the edge of that spring, push that down into the hole, and get the pin started. Let me zoom in on that a little bit. If you look in there, you can see just the point of that pin is now retaining the spring. So I'm going to gently start tapping that with a hammer. I don't want to bend the spring, so I'm just going to kind of gently tap that with a hammer to get that through the rest of the way. Do that a few light taps, make sure it's going. There we go, yeah. Nice and easy. Again, you just want to make sure that the point of that pin has not caught between a couple coils of your spring. Safety's back in. I'll put this tube back in. I got, like I said, I've got the one end with the clip. On my trigger assembly, there's one end that's recessed. So I'm going to drop the tube in from that side. As I push it through, it just comes out the other side, but not enough actually for there to even be a clip on that side. We'll put in the sear. Again, make sure just the little hook will be towards the front, these pieces towards the back. I'm going to drop that in. We have that small sort of short pin. Drops in the back side. You have to wiggle that a little, get that lined up. There we go. It's rotating, pin is in. All right, now we're going to put in the hammer, the action bar release, plunger, and this little spring at the front. So first thing, put the little spring on. Kind of spreads over the front. Then there's this little raised portion the spring needs to go over, like that. I'm going to drop the action bar release in. This little spring leg right here needs to be in front of this. Okay, worry about that exact positioning later, but flip it over, should look like that. And drop the plunger and spring in. Now, the corner of the action bar release right here will eventually be on top of the plunger. It is a struggle to get this pin in with spring pressure from this, spring pressure from that little wire spring, and the trigger or the hammer all being in there. So I'm going to start putting my pin in from the right side. My pin goes in very easily. Push it through the hammer. I'm just pushing it far enough that it starts to come out the far side. I'm going to try to zoom in so you can see that. Here's the pin. You can just see it coming out the far side there. So I'm going to push down on this plunger. I'm going to start to pull the hammer back, but not too much. If you pull it all the way back so that it latches, there's a lot of pressure on this pin, very hard to push through. But right now, yeah, I can kind of play with that pressure a little bit, move that pin back and forth a bit. So I'm going to keep a little bit of pressure, flip this over. Again, make sure my little wire spring is on the right side or the front side of my action bar release. And as I'm kind of doing it this way so I can sort of see through the top, kind of line up my holes, and then I'm just pushing up from the bottom with my finger on this pin. I've already got it started into this now. Might need to give that a few taps, but I'm only now going to tap this because I basically have it all the way through. Again, very light taps. Okay, action bar release on top of the plunger, little spring hooked, hammer has spring tension. I'm going to put the trigger in, this drops down inside. This tab fits right in between these two pieces, so it goes above the action bar and below this. Then you can drop this pin in, line it up with the hole in the trigger. So you're going to have to do that a little bit by feel because it's all sort of inside the mechanism, but not a difficult thing to do. You just have to kind of get that lined up right. You can always flip that over. If you have a light, look through the back side. See what I have for light. There we go. Okay, so my pin's almost all the way through. Again, this is a fluted pin, so I'm going to have to finish driving that the rest of the way. Once you've got that pin more or less in, double check that this setup is correct. Then you can drive that pin in. Now we're going to just put the shell lifter in place. So you have this large piece with these two kind of loose pieces. This little black piece just goes like that. That hole is going to line up. This claw type piece will be up. So put that over top. Oh, actually one thing first, you have to put this piston or plunger and spring in. Be careful, that will go flying across your workbench. I have tested and found out that it does. Okay, so I'm kind of working that into place. Oop, doing that wrong. That actually makes sure it's under your hammer as you do that. See, so your hammer should be on the top side there. Push this down. It does kind of catch on the lip right there, so you got to make sure that the plunger is actually into the hole. There we go. And then you should be able to slide the shell lifter into place. Like that. Again, you're going to be fighting spring tension. Put this pin in. That will take a little bit of kind of wiggling and manipulating to get just right because, like I said, you are fighting the spring tension from that plunger. Plus you have three pieces you're trying to all get perfectly aligned. There we go. So we'll finish pushing that all the way through. Only have one of the little spring clips. I'm going to put that back on. There we go. Out the other side. Little spring clip. Kind of snap that on. There's a little slot cut in these, so you put the flat piece in the slot and then you can pull this over. Or if you have old fingers like mine, you can just drop the spring. There we go. Spring is in place. Last thing we're going to do is put the main trigger spring in, and then we'll test this. All right, so we've got the trigger spring. One end is going to go on this little bump. Other end on that little bump. Put that in. Start compressing that. There we go. Got that hooked on. Let's give it a test. Cock the hammer back. Try the safety. Doesn't fire. Release the safety. I'm just going to throw a shop towel on there so that doesn't smash into the lifter. Pull the trigger. And away you go. Trigger assembly is back together and good to go. Alright, so there you have it. Remington 870 complete disassembly and reassembly. Hope you enjoyed the video. As always, click that like and subscribe, and we'll see you on the next one.